Everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Liam's First Look. And this week, we're looking at UFC Vegas 74. Guys, you may notice we weren't here last week. There was no UFC action to break down, but I'm excited to get back into it this week. Just as a programming note, guys, Rich, my co-host on the Thursday program, he informed me he's no longer going to be doing the show on Thursdays. I tweeted that out as well. So don't worry, that content's still going to be coming your way as expected, but just going to be tweaking it a little bit in terms of maybe having some rotating guests on. That's how my show started. We'll go back to that format for the time being, and maybe we'll find a permanent co-host situation. We'll work on that. I'm open to feedback from you guys as well, whatever you'd like to see. But, we wish Rich the best in all that he does moving forward. But, nothing I could do. He told me he didn't want to be on the show anymore. The show's going to keep moving forward. We had been doing it for a long time, having a lot of success. So just looking forward to keeping that train moving. So appreciate the time that he was on the show, but it's always forward on this show. So appreciate you guys that are sticking around. And in terms of what we're doing on this show, if you guys are here for the first time, Liam's First Look is when I start to look at these cards. Maybe I take in some trends. I break down some information, how fighters have performed against the odds in the past, some things like that. And I try and bring those trends, some of that information to you guys before I've fully fledged some of my opinions. I do have one bet on this fight. I actually placed it early last week, and we've seen significant line movement to the point where I wouldn't even advocate necessarily tailing the side at this point. It's part of the benefits of getting in early on some of these plays, but also I like to wait. I like to see how lines move. I'm pretty good. I like to think at predicting where lines are going to move over the course of a week. And so in my opinion, I felt like the bet that I targeted, I knew it was going to be moving at some point. But some of these other lines, I'm waiting to see how they react over the course of the week. But we've got a fascinating main event, guys, for UFC Vegas 74. We've got Kara-France, fresh off a title fight loss. One of the things we talk about in sports betting overall is angles. And angles are things that you look at as a way to make money by, betting into a concept over time instead of a fighter. You can get lost sometimes in the details when you start looking at two fighters. But if you have a winning angle, like, for example, fighters coming off of title fights, a lot of people like to fade them when they lose those fights because your next fight is not as big as your last fight, right? Last fight, it's for the title. It's against Brandon Moreno. Huge matchup for Kara-France. Big title opportunity. He's got a lot of fights under his belt, a lot of losses too, especially for a guy at this level. Made it to the title chance with that belt. Just came short, right? Had some success in that fight too, but then he ends up getting finished. So now he's coming back here. That's a big monkey to get off your back. He's been finished by another guy who's in contention for that top title spot in Brandon Royval. So how is he going to get back to that title opportunity? It's going to be a hard climb. It's going to be a slog. It's going to be difficult sledding for Kara-France a little bit to get back to that title fight. Not impossible, not something you can't do, but in terms of the motivation spot, sometimes that could be a little lacking for guys like Kara-France who are, putting it all on the line here against the up-and-comer in Amir Albazi. And one of the things that stood out to me right away about Amir Albazi is the record, right? 16-1. I said to myself, what was that loss like? Did he get finished? What did it look like? Did he have any success? And it's against Jose Shorty Torres. It was the last fight that I watched before I got on stream here today, guys. And, he had a lot of success in that fight, but Jose Shorty Torres had a lot of success in that fight too. And I felt like Albazi, he probably learned a lot from that experience. It was a little bit of a level up in competition, right? He took a big step up in competition from fighting on the London regional scene and against a bunch of guys he was maybe overqualified against in terms of skill. And then, he ended up falling short there. Did he have moments of huge success? Yeah, he absolutely rocked Jose Shorty Torres. He took his back. He had some really good positions, just wasn't able to capitalize. And in the third round, made some really terrible strategic decisions, right? He ended up pulling guard there, losing the fight, going for guillotines off his back, triangles off his back. And he's a very dangerous submission grappler, make no mistake. When he was a purple belt making his UFC debut, he submitted Malcolm Gordon in the first round with a triangle choke. Malcolm Gordon's a black belt and known for having a poor chin, but being a good grappler. And he just easily audited him on the ground there in that fight. So I think that Amir Albazi, what he's shown me over time is improvements. He's definitely getting better. He's gotten better with his striking, and he's also surrounded himself with greatness. London Shoot Fighters, very good team, but he's also worked with Extreme Couture, gotten a lot of really good looks in. So I feel like he's a guy who's making a lot of improvements, getting better. We talk about it a lot on this show. People that are training in that Nexus in Las Vegas, they have a lot of advantages at 135. You're getting looks with Patchy Mix, with Aljamain Sterling, Merab Dvalishvili, and the list goes on in terms of all the killers that are training out there in Vegas right now. So I think that Amir Albazi is one of them. Just like the Basharat brothers, right? We'll talk about some of their matchups a little bit later on the card as well. But it's interesting. I just think that when the UFC puts these matchups together, you always have to think about why. Right. And sometimes it's to make a really fun stylistic clash. You got a little bit of that striker versus grappler dynamic here. Kara-France, kickboxer, classically trained at City Kickboxing, one of the premier kickboxing gyms in mixed martial arts today. Nobody would dispute that. And he's done well at times against guys that are static wrestlers that get caught on the back. We saw that against, who was it? I'm trying to think now. Askar Askarov, right? I was there at UFC Columbus, as a matter of fact. And Askar Askarov had the back. He had really dominant positions. Kara-France showed good composure. He showed a willingness to deal with some adversity there, fight the hands, stay in the fight, and eventually claw his way back, getting the knockdowns, finding the big shots. And so he has dynamic power as a flyweight. I think that's a unique attribute. I think that's why, Kara-France has some selling points here, why people are interested in playing that side. We've seen Amir Albazi get dropped by Jose Shorty Torres in 2019. So it's not like he has an ironclad chin that can never be touched or tested. He's definitely been hurt to the chin before, but I do think he's getting better. I think that it's very probable that he's on the sauce now, if he wasn't before. Just based on his physicality and how he's looked, I think that his wrestling is coming along. He's got good single legs to a cutback. So he can basically single leg, run the pipe, get inside, head in the inside, sit back with it, and drop people to their butt. He's doing a fantastic job with that. And it's paid dividends for him in terms of getting on top of people in the UFC. On top, he's quite good. He keeps a very conservative base in the guard, but then he can pass the guard. He can operate from the top position. He can move around his opponent, and he could flow very well on top. He's a very aggressive grappler, constantly looking for subs. And when you try and buck, move, roll away, he's trying to turn that into a submission opportunity that he can finish. And I think for Kara-France, this is probably the most difficult grappling threat he's faced since Brandon Royval. And Brandon Royval, he's not the cleanest grappler in the world, but what he brings in fighting and in grappling is a hellacious pace and a rate of attack where I was saying to somebody after jiu-jitsu yesterday, it doesn't have to be very sophisticated, but if you ask somebody 2 + 2, 500 times in a row, they might just eventually get sick of answering the question. It doesn't even matter if it's a difficult question or not. You present it enough times, it could be a problem for somebody. And for Kara-France, what happened to him in that fight is he started to get overwhelmed. He started to get anxious and anticipatory for opportunities. He hurt Brandon Royval. He rushed in. He got hit with a spinning elbow, and he got submitted there in the second round. And that was a prediction, one of my favorite predictions ever. I have the write-up and everything. I'll share that on social media later, but just one of my favorite predictions ever, because I kind of felt like I knew exactly what was going to happen there. Royval just brings this hellacious energy, really dangerous guy, dangerous in all positions, absolute scrapper. And I feel like Amir Albazi kind of represents a lot of those same things. Has he been tested by the same level of competition as Royval? No. Has he been tested by the same level of competition as Kara-France? No. But has he, done his job accordingly in the UFC? Yes. And here's what I mean. Against Zalga Zumagulov, basically nobody goes out there and gets clean wins over the guy via decision. I have to go back and rewatch that, but I feel like that's one of the least controversial, losses for Zalgas in the UFC, right? Everybody beats Zalgas by decision, but it's a split decision, and everybody says the other guy should have won. That wasn't the case here, in my recollection of it, at least. So got to go back and rewatch that. But again, this is my first look, and just thinking to myself, Malcolm Gordon, the guy you got to go out there and finish. He does that. His last fight against Costa gets to finish with the hands, something that maybe people weren't expecting from him, showing another dynamic, another layer to the game. So he's basically done everything you'd expect. Figueiredo, a guy who people kind of think of as fraudulent, goes out there, gets the finish, makes it look easy. So I think that Albazi, he's a really dangerous guy, and maybe he's a little bit underknown in this spot, but I feel like maybe Kara-France, he's been there, done that as a title challenger. I think that Albazi is a guy you could easily package in that role. 16-1, great record. If he gets the win here, 17-1, you're looking at a very dynamic threat. You're looking at a guy who's got good hands to the extent that he just got a win by knockout, right, in his last fight. It's all about how you can market it or promote it, baby. And if the UFC can cut together that package of the knockout with the uppercuts and whatever, the reason Kara-France got that title shot is because he had the cool highlights with the uppercuts, the knockouts, the putting down Cody Garbrandt, all that stuff, the yelling in people's faces. Kara-France isn't that huge of a star, but he had a good highlight reel. It's the flyweight division. They're looking for people they can promote. This guy was in a featured bout last time that he fought in the UFC. I think that matters. I think they're trying to move this guy up the card. I like Amir Albazi as my first lean here on the card. But, am I married to it? No. I don't love the prices on the props. I think that his most likely path to winning this fight is by submission. I just think that he's the more dangerous guy. I think he's more versed on the ground. Kara-France has shown good answers when he's not under panic, when he's not under duress, when he's not worried about your striking. And I think in this fight, he's going to have to worry about all those things. So for me, I lean towards the Albazi side, and I'm curious to see where this line goes, because I believe Kara-France, best fight odds, the demise of best fight odds has been a tragedy for the community. So if you guys know what I'm talking about, God bless you. But overall, makes it harder to track some of these opening odds. And I believe that Kara-France opened here as high as a -200 favorite. And Albazi's been bet down considerably. Now it's hanging out around a pick'em. Seems more appropriate to me around those odds than the opener here. But now I'm kind of interested to see, what this looks like. So I'm kind of I'm going to wait and see. But I think that this is a fight that probably closes in the pick'em range, if I had to guess, just because there's a lot of reasons to like both sides. If you like the UFC tested guy, you're probably leaning towards Kara-France. If you like the upside and the grappling of Amir Albazi, you're probably leaning that way. Next up, we got the co-main event of the evening. And, I won't sugarcoat it, guys. I don't have a very strong opinion here off the rip. Alex Caceres, a guy that I think is pretty constantly underrated, but that's not the case this weekend. He's going to come in here as a favorite against Daniel Pineda. And Daniel Pineda, he's pulled some upsets, in his career. When he's on the sauce, he's absolutely pulling upsets at an insane clip. And I think that he's done it at a couple of pretty big, wide ranges. Now it's a much more close range. And, I got to tell you, it's a really weird fight because Pineda, there's a few reasons really not to like him from the UFC standpoint, right? Proven drug cheat or whatever, right? He's been caught, if everybody does it, but you get caught, that's the problem for you. And I think that with Pineda, he's also a little bit on the older end of the division, but he's a dangerous guy. He could still punch, he could still hit, and he basically goes out there and is hellacious for the first 2 rounds, but he doesn't have the cardio much to go beyond that. For Caceres, I think that if this fight went to decision, he would probably be the guy more likely to win it because he's a guy who's a little bit more consistent, a little bit more paced. He's gone 5 rounds before, but Caceres is a guy that can get overwhelmed himself. He's been submitted a number of times in his career, but I think that when you look at Caceres these days, he's been much more dangerous, much more composed. His striking's looking better. His grappling's looking better as well. So he's not the most physical guy. He's not the most dynamic guy. But I just think technically he's a very sound fighter. But the kind of intensity that Pineda brings, that might be the kind of thing that throws him off. So I think Pineda is very live to win this fight in the first round. But I do think beyond that, Caceres is just more likely to get to these control positions, the back, put a body triangle, and make this guy hold on for a while. And I think, that's the kind of thing that Pineda doesn't like. He doesn't like fights that, get slowed down where he can't really exert his will. He's a very dynamic fighter. And so I think that if you can mute some of that, you can get to some positions. I think Pineda sometimes can get caught up in that. So when you look at what Pineda does, he normally goes balls to the wall for a bonus, looking for that fight of the night check, 50,000, whatever. So Yeah, I think Dick's Insider, fight to end by sub. I don't hate that. But the truth is, man, I think that Daniel Pineda could knock him out. I think that Alex Caceres, if this fight gets extended, could knock him out. These are both very dangerous guys. So for me, the lean here is fight does not go to decision. Like I said, I think if it does go the distance, that leans towards an Alex Caceres fight. But for me, I just have to lean towards somebody getting really violent in this fight and getting the win. So that's my lean for the co-main event of the evening. And we can move along to the featured bout if I can get Tapology to load here for me. Shout out to everybody in the chat, by the way, guys. We got a lot of heavy hitters, a lot of sharp people that are commenting. So appreciate each and every one of you guys that are being a part of the show and rocking with us. Jim Miller taking on Jared Gordon. And this is a fascinating one. A couple really interesting notes off the top. Number one, you got two guys that have like opposite careers, right? Jim Miller, when you look at fights that end inside the distance, I believe he's 12-5. This is all numbers off the top of my head, but I believe he's 12-5 or something like that. And when you look the opposite way, fights that end in decision, he doesn't have, he's got a very salty record. It's like 10-13, something like that. So basically Jim Miller is just a very dangerous guy. He's a gritty vet, hard to put away, Lyme disease, New Jersey represent. Wants to fight at UFC 300. That's his goal, his mission, what's keeping him motivated, what's keeping him around. And he's a really dangerous fighter. You give him one of these young green guys off the regional scene, oftentimes Jim Miller is going to put him away and do it in devastating fashion. We saw that with Nicholas Mota. He's got the power. He can knock people out. And that's where the real concern lies here. I do a tweet every week. I talk about the layoff report. I go straight from betmma.tips. It's a very good source of information. However, this fight was not in the database because it was created as a no contest. Jared Gordon was knocked unconscious by a headbutt from Bobby Green, a headbutt, whatever you want to call it, right? Clash of heads. But either way, these guys bonked heads. Our guy, Jared Gordon, went to sleep. Then he bing, 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 punched him out of there. And, I think all things considered, man, that's really scary for Jared Gordon, whose problem has always been his chin. You look at Jared Gordon throughout his career. Has he been bad at grappling? No. He got audited a little bit by Grant Dawson, but that's because he's a tweener, guys. He's a guy that fought at 45. Now he's up at 55, right? Jim Miller, he's not the biggest, most intimidating guy at 155 pounds, but he still hits hard. He's still got a very good left hook. He's still got power in his punches. He's still a tricky guy. He still goes to the body. So this is a very binary fight in a lot of ways. Jared Gordon is like 11-1 in fights that go the distance. I just told you, Jim Miller, he's got a salty record in fights that go to decision, especially at this stage of his career. He doesn't really have the cardio to do it. So overall, Jim Miller, great fighter, fun guy, fun story, but we kind of know how this fight's going to go in the sense that Jim Miller is either going to knock out Jared Gordon or get to him early, or he's probably going to have a really long night because Jared Gordon never lacks for cardio. He never lacks for preparation. He works really hard, shows up in shape. And I don't know that he would take this fight if he didn't think that he could just press Jim Miller into the fence. And, he's basically got to be the faster, more evasive guy here, move around an older fighter, not make any categorical, catastrophic mistakes. And if he can outwork him, he's going to easily win this fight down the stretch because he just has better cardio. He's 5 years younger here. And Jim Miller just has been slowing down in a lot of his recent performances. But we have seen, he's tough as all hell. We've seen Jim Miller still fight to the bitter end in fights where he's outgunned, outmatched. So he's a really tough guy. He's a picture of perseverance. But I think that Jared Gordon, barring a knockout loss here, is going to look, like the hindsight favorite. Next up, we've got Tim Elliott taking on Victor Altamirano. And, this fight is the talk of the town this week for whatever reason, probably because of some of the extracurriculars outside the octagon, right? We know that our guy Tim Elliott's been going through it a little bit. He's been making that public. He's been doing the rounds and interviews, talking about some marital problems, some betrayal, and look at where it's centered out of, right? Glory MMA and kickboxing. I've been talking about that on this channel for 2 years now. I don't know, something like that. Just talking about the fact that there was a weird conflict of interest going on at Glory MMA and Fitness. They got the guy doing freaking Fight Pass and talking about all his betting arrangements, and then he's in the corner the same week. So, Gina Mazzani, Kevin Kroom, all these fighters, all the fighters that come from that Krause central location, I'm now viewing with some skeptical hippo eyes, and just, always watching them a little bit more closely, because you have to understand, guys, their whole training situation completely unraveled underneath them, right? Their guy that they were being coached by is now no longer allowed to coach. So they had to go find a new facility or work with new coaches or figure out some kind of new arrangement for themselves. That's hectic. Right now, imagine you're doing that while you're going through these extramarital problems, while you got all these other things going on. You're 30 fights deep in a professional career. You're a little bit on the older side of the division. You got a guy 4 years younger than you out there in front of you. It's a lot to ask of him in this fight. Tim Elliott, guy who's been around a long time, former title challenger, but, he's definitely cheated in a bunch of his fights, hasn't gotten caught yet, and reprimanded and lost a bunch of points. But that, I think, is always in question. My guy Lou always talks about the yam bag special. This might be the one where you see a point deducted, because Tim Elliott likes to grab gloves. He likes to do all this and that, a little bit underhanded tactics at times. And I found it, a little bit interesting that he's so popular this week, because Tim Elliott, traditionally a guy that people, didn't seem to get behind, been available at underdog prices oftentimes. So it's just some interesting things here. But yeah, I'm definitely, I'm not looking to invest in the Tim Elliott side. I could say that for sure. I probably lean towards this fight going to decision more often than not. I think Altamirano, it's possible he could pace him late, but he's not the most dynamic finisher in the world. It's just a guy that goes out there and puts on pretty gritty, back and forth, tough fights with most people. And I think that's what I kind of expect from him here as well. He's been in a lot of close fights. I think he'll probably be in another close fight. And I just think people might be getting a little too bullish on Tim for the redemption story. I remember it happened to me once with our guy, what's his name? JP Buys, right? JP Buys, he was the other guy that, his girl cheated on him. He's on the revenge tour. Guys, it went sideways for him, right? It didn't end up working out. So, maybe it works out for Tim Elliott, and we wish him well. But it's just to say that's not a reason to bet on somebody. That's not a reason to handicap it in their favor. And I just think that this is probably a closer fight on paper than people are giving it credit for. Obviously, Tim Elliott's a much more seasoned guy and experienced, but he's also a lot longer in the tooth and had a lot of chaos going on outside the cage, some injury concerns as well. So just a lot of things that I don't really like to see when I'm going to part with my money and financially invest in somebody's success. Next up, we've got Karine Silva taking on Ketlen Souza, and I got to do my due diligence a little bit more on the Ketlen Souza side, especially got to go back and watch more tape. So that's why, again, this is my first look, but what I got to tell you guys, is that I did do my research here in the sense that I noticed something very interesting off the rip. You look at Karine Silva, she is 15-3 in fights that end inside the distance, but she is 0-1 in fights that go to decision. And just about the exact opposite is the case for her opponent here in Ketlen Souza, 9-3 inside the distance against 4-0 by decision. I now have brought up my document, so making it a lot easier for me to recall some of this information. But overall here, guys, you have Karine Silva, I think is a prime candidate for potential recency bias. And let me explain why. When you look at her, win on the Contender Series, she gets the win via finish. That'll get people excited. Then you go out there, your UFC debut, you deliver, you get another big finish, boom. Now, a lot of people are going to be really excited about your next fight, really excited about what you have going on. And I think that could be the case here. Ketlen Souza, she has a pretty solid record, I think, regionally. Again, this is more from Tapology and looking through people's record with a little bit more of a fine tooth comb, and investigating how they perform. She's done well, more often than not. She's lost to some UFC level competition. She lost early on in her career. Her last submission loss was in 2018, if memory serves. So I don't think that she is a bum. I don't think that she is a girl who's going to be here for one or two fights. I think she's probably going to have, some wins in the UFC. So could this be one of them? Let's find out. But I think that overall, it's a very compelling fight for me, and a fight where it's classic WMMA. I'm not really looking to lay the chalk side favorite, especially when we know that it's a mostly finishing upside. And I do think that it's possible that Karine can compete on the feet, but can she compete for the full 15 minutes? I do think that's an open question. We know that the other girl can do that. So for me, that's one of the real considerations here that I have to make. And how often do we see WMMA fights go to decision? More often than not, right? Way over 50%. So when you have one girl whose record in decision 0-1, the other girl who's been really overperforming in decisions, that is going to, catch my attention, to say the least. But we can move on to the next fight here, and should have a lot of great things to talk about here as we round out the main card. Guys, if you're not already, make sure that you subscribe to the channel. Make sure that you drop a like on this video. Appreciate each and every one of you guys tuning in. It's 3:50 right now in the East, so appreciate everybody rocking with us this afternoon or morning, evening, wherever you're watching from in the world. Really appreciate it, guys. Jamie Mullarkey is up next, and he's taking on Muhammadjon Naimov. Forgive me, guys. I have not heard his name pronounced yet. This is a guy who did fight on the Contender Series, lost to Colin Anglin. Not a great look there. Colin Anglin, guy who really struggled at the UFC level. But overall, going to give this guy a second look. He's obviously coming in here as a massive underdog. Mullarkey went from being one of the bigger dogs on the card to being one of the bigger favorites on the card. So I know our DraftKings homies like Uncle Weezy in the building are going to be excited about that. Shout out to Uncle Weezy. And I definitely will be looking for that prop as well. See what they open it up at on some of these domestics. Great shout, Uncle Weezy. As far as Jamie Mullarkey goes, I mean, the idea of laying him as a minus 500 favorite just doesn't seem enticing to me at all. I think that it's possible that, he's going to prioritize the finish here. That's what he's saying in interviews. He's got a guy who probably a little bit underqualified based on what we know about him, but it's very interesting. They're bringing in these two guys on short notice, both Tajikistan fighters. I found that very interesting. So Dixon Sider says Naimov by spinning lead kick KO. Damn. All right. So we got some bold predictions. So honestly, this is a fight where I just got to do more due diligence, plain and simple. This fight was put together on short notice. So forgive me, compiled some information, but just not a ton to go on in this fight. Next up, we've got Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos. I call him Easy Dos. Easy Dos Santos taking on Abubakar Nurmagomedov. And this is a really interesting one because this fight opens up, pick 'em. It gets run out to about a minus 150 for our guy Easy Dos. Now it's back to that pick 'em range. And, I can understand why in a lot of ways. Talking about the layoff report that I tweeted out today at Liam Picks Fights on Twitter. If you guys are on there, go ahead and give me a follow. But just in terms of the layoff report, Easy Dos, he's been out for over 18 months, longest layoff on the card by a decent grip here. Hasn't been around since 2021. And that last fight, it had to have been really disheartening for him. He went out there, he put on the performance of a lifetime. That freaking absolute screw job referee, Vasilov Borishev, or no, God, that's the lightweight. They who fought Mahashate. What the hell is the guy's name? If somebody knows it, please go ahead and send that in the chat so we can besmirch the guy's name. But this is what's so interesting here, because when you look at Nurmagomedov, most of his career, he was priced as a really aggressive favorite. He dropped the ball a couple times, right? He did against Zawada. He ended up getting submitted, that suffered a couple really notable defeats. Kisiev. Thank you, Mark. Yes. Vashishev Kisliev. Yes, John Smith. Thank you, guys. Great work. Team effort there. That guy, absolutely terrible referee, been a terrible referee for a long time, just lets people get absolutely knocked into the outer orbit of the abyss. So I think that this is a really compelling fight because Zaleski is a dynamic finisher, right? But he's getting older and he's probably starting to slow down just a touch, right? And I think that makes for an interesting fight here because Abubakar in his last two fights, he didn't impress anybody, right? He didn't really blow anybody's hair back. He fought 2 middling level UFC guys, Jared Gooden, and then I forget the other gentleman's name, but another just, pretty forgettable UFC fighter. And he threw a good amount of jabs. He kept people at distance. He moved around the octagon. He kept it very basic, kept a very workman-like approach. And that's a way that you could beat Zaleski. When you beat Zaleski, most of the time it's by split decision, right? The Leech ended up finishing him via knockout, but most of the time, you got to grease that really close decision. Think about Muslim Salikov. Ends up going out there very close. Could have went either way. They ended up giving it his way. So it's just, he hasn't always been a guy that works really hard in that third round, goes for it all out. Even against Benoit Saint Denis, we saw him absolutely beat the tar out of that guy, but then he gassed himself beating the hell out of him. So it's like, I think that he's just a guy that I can't really trust, especially at a big chalk price. At a pick'em odds, I understand why people want to come in on that side. He's definitely the more dynamic fighter on the feet. He's more dangerous. He's got pretty good Brazilian jiu-jitsu as well, but he's a guy that takes so many risks, takes so many chances, spends a lot of his energy in the early going of the fight. That could just really leave you bereft later in the fight. And I think it's interesting to see the resistance in the market as well. Abubakar is definitely the more well-known fighter, but the guy who's probably more known amongst UFC audiences and a little bit more versed, might be Zaleski. So I think the fact that you're getting a Nurmagomedov at -110 is a red flag, given how the public perception is. But I really don't know what to make of this because they did offer him a plus money and that evaporated quickly. So I don't know how this line's going to move. I don't feel compelled to play it either way, but I think that what could be, counter narrative play, where you're just trying to exploit really long odds is I think that it's interesting. It's interesting, right? I haven't bet these, right? But I just think it's interesting. Nurmagomedov inside the distance is like +600. By sub is like +1,800. And we've seen Zaleski lose in those manners before. He doesn't have the best cardio. Nurmagomedov has a handful of wins by that manner. So I do think that was something I found interesting. It's like 18, 20 to 1. That's why I just think it's a little bit wide for the division overall. So I think this is a very compelling fight, very fun fight at 170. And I love to see Elizeu dos Santos back. If you guys want to just watch somebody who's fun as all hell, go back and watch Elizeu dos Santos highlights. The guy is fun. He spinning kicked Sean Strickland into the shadow realm. One of the craziest UFC knockouts you'll ever see. Capoeira. I think that he's a fun guy to have back in the fold, but I just don't know at this point in his career with all the inactivity if I can really trust him at this stage. Next up, John Castaneda taking on Muin Gafurov. And Muin Gafurov, guys, one of my he will always be in my heart, my betting Hall of Fame. Cheers, because I faded Muin Gafurov, with our guy Chad and Hellinger on the Dana White Contender Series, and it's one of my favorite bets of all time. Chad and Hellinger, he's got the shorter arms, Canadian fellow, older guy for the division. Got everybody just instantly Tapology bet him, ruled him off. I bet him at like +285 against Muin Gafurov, and then it kept going. It kept getting wider and wider, and I kept adding and adding and adding at +325, at +350, whatever it was. And the line was just absurd and ridiculous. Chad and Hellinger ends up going out there, getting a close one over Muin Gafurov. But Muin Gafurov, he's a guy that's finished a lot of fights. And when he doesn't finish, he's 1-4 in decisions. So Muin Gafurov, he's really struggled in those extended fights that go to 15 against better opponents when he stepped up in competition. Against lower level guys, tends to blow him out of the water. This is an interesting fight, though, because Muin Gafurov accepted this on short notice. But Castaneda is coming back with a skeleton in his closet. He just got knocked out brutally by Daniel Santos with that knee in his last fight. And it's hard to know how people are going to react after they come off of a knockout loss. Daniel Santos, obviously a very dangerous guy. And he was preparing for a fight with Mateus Mendonca, a fight where Castaneda, I think would have had pretty clear advantages in the wrestling, potentially to get into top position, right? I think that Mendonca is a very, wild, flowy guy. He likes to strike on the feet. And, he also is a little bit wild, so he can get put to his back at times. But I think that Castaneda, he's got his hands full a little bit in this fight. Just again, I got to do a little bit more due diligence here myself. Haven't bet on this fight, certainly, but just looking at it on paper, I feel like this is a harder fight for Castaneda. It's a guy that could finish him, that could put him in danger, that could hurt him with shots. But I think that if Castaneda wants to win this fight, he's going to bring his wrestling shoes and his headgear. He's going to go for takedown, takedown, takedown. He's going to try and push this guy's cardio, push his pace, and extend this fight the full 15. I think that's a winnable path for him. So I think both guys have a path to winning here, but I understand why people are flocking to that underdog money on Muin Gafurov. When, again, he seems very conveniently brought in another Tajikistan fighter, on the same card, both brought in short notice. And Muin Gafurov was the guy they were setting up on Contender Series, right? You think the UFC had plans for Chad and Hellinger? No, he just won. So they're like, all right, off to the races. We'll get him in there for some fights. He fought Jesse Schrader, a couple guys. But, Chad and Hellinger wasn't necessarily a building block for the company. Muin Gafurov was the kind of young prospect they're looking to sign. And I think that Muin Gafurov, maybe with that maturity, maybe with a couple big losses under his belt, has learned enough to get that UFC win. But UFC jitter is always a possibility. Just seems like a fight that has pass written all over it for me. But I will reserve judgment until I do a little bit deeper research on that fight. But with that being said, I will pull up the Tapology and we will move along to the next fight. Want to say once again, thank you to everybody who's rocking with us live. Over 50 people rocking with us. Appreciate each and every one of you guys. We got a lot of great information still to break down on the preliminary portion of the card. So without further ado, let's get into it in earnest. We've got Andrei Arlovski, the bane of my bank account in existence, taking on Don'Tale Mayes. Oh boy, Lord Kong, Don'Tale Mayes. He's the next, bottom tier UFC heavyweight to get the Andrei Arlovski opportunity. And Arlovski, he's a guy that's been knocked out many, many times in his career. Especially, at that midpoint of his career, went on a run where he was getting knocked out at a really alarming rate. But in recent years, he's mostly held up better under those circumstances. They've match made him very effectively against lower tier heavyweights, against guys like, what was his name? Oh my God. I'm trying to think now of the Arlovski run. Carlos Boy, Philippe, Jake Collier, Jared Vandera, Chase Sherman, Tanner Bozer, Felipe Lins, who we'll talk about later. Just a bunch of guys that were in low motivation spots that didn't really want to be there. People that weren't very serious about their craft, let's say. Those are the kind of guys that Andrei Arlovski is going to run over, by doing a little bit more, by touching him a little bit, by being more vet savvy, by having more people in the audience cheering his name when he throws his 8 punches around compared to your, 12 punches around. He just finds ways to win these fights. And sometimes, like against Collier, I thought he lost the fight clearly. I thought he clearly lost that fight. I thought Collier did the better work. I thought he did more work. I thought he landed more volume. Thought he got the takedown when it mattered. I thought everything pointed to Collier there. And how'd they rule it? They ruled it for Arlovski. And I'll tell you guys, in that UFC Apex, it doesn't take a lot. You guys know this as well as I do, right? The fans in the arena are not going to give a flying shit about Don'Tale Mayes. Andrei Arlovski is a former UFC champ. He's been in the main events. He's been in all the big fights. So Don'Tale Mayes definitely could go out there and knock out Andrei Arlovski. He's the bigger guy. He's the longer guy. He throws awkward strikes, but he's not very good. He's not very processed. He's not very coherent. He doesn't always make the best decisions out there. Has he gotten a jiu-jitsu purple belt? Yes. Is he the bigger guy? Has he implemented wrestling in some of his fights? Yes, and to good effect. If he does that against Arlovski, Arlovski will probably get submitted here because Arlovski quits on the ground with shocking rapidity. When he gets put on the ground with a serious attempt and he can't get back up quickly, he does things like turning his back, just giving up the neck, and it's really fundamentally not sound. He did it against Aspinall. We've seen it other times as well. So I just think that Arlovski, he's kind of a measuring stick guy. He's somebody that they put out there to see what they have. And Don'Tale Mayes, in fairness, has had a lot of tough assignments in the UFC. He fought Cyril Gane early on. He hasn't always had an easy run. But even Hamdi, right? He's the guy that everybody laughed at and joked about. But when you've got Olympic level wrestling, that's just a different level of athleticism than most guys in the UFC. So I feel like Don'Tale Mayes, he's probably going to win some UFC level heavyweight fights. He's just not very reliable. So the idea of betting on him, as a favorite, not something I love, but, maybe targeting him, if you're confident in which path he's going to take in this fight. I want to listen to some interviews, see if he wants to wrestle, if he wants to go out there and strike. I think striking with Andrei would be a mistake, because that's how you get lulled to sleep, how you get lulled into, losing a 29-28 gross decision. But I think if Don'Tale Mayes goes out there and tries to force grappling and get on top of Andrei, he could look like a hindsight big favorite here. Because Andrei he's 44 years of age, guys. Eventually the wheels completely fall off. And I think if you got a bigger guy trying to tackle you into the fence, that's not going to be a good look for Andrei, I don't think. Yeah, smash the like, says Nigel Lee. I appreciate you. Everybody take that advice. It's great advice. Smash the like button. Get subscribed if you're not already. Constantly talking fights on this channel. And we've got UFC all summer, baby. I think 13 straight weeks of UFC coming at you, and we'll be here each and every week breaking it down for you on this channel. So appreciate each and every one of you guys that's rocking with us. Marcel says, Don'Tale, big for nothing, Mays. You could not have said anything more true, brother. So truly appreciate you contributing. Marcel, been around the channel for a long time. Appreciate you, my brother. Next up, guys, let's see what we've got here. We got Daniel Santos taking on Johnny Munoz Jr., and this is a rebooked fight. Ladies and gentlemen, this fight was canceled. I got to go back and revisit. Why was this fight canceled? I don't remember off the top of my head. You guys could educate me in the chat if you would like, but I've told you guys before, and I'll mention it again here. I think it's a great opportunity to talk about this, but one thing I don't love doing, I do it from time to time. Sometimes you have to, right? Tatsuro Taira was an example, but one thing I hate having to do is bet on a rebooked fight. And the reason I say that is because, a bookmaker, they have a lot of advantages when it comes to this betting thing, right? One of the things that isn't an advantage for the bookmaker is the fact they have to put out odds for every fight, right? So they have to expose themselves everywhere. They give a lot of opportunities to the player where you might say, I'm going to look for this fight that people aren't paying attention to, a little bit off the board, a little bit off the radar, and make my money there, right? You have a lot of options. They have to hang it up there, right? They got to give you something. So that's your advantage as the player, but they've got a ton of advantages. The VIG, right? They're booking, 3 to 5 to, sometimes 7% on these money lines. So they're making sure that they've got a lot of leeway, a lot of room to run. From a bookmaking perspective, they've got a lot of advantages. Let me tell you one more big advantage that the bookmaker has. They've got better information. They've got relationships with the company. They probably have, underhanded relationships with gyms, managers, coaches, whatever it is. Hey, is your guy okay? Hey, are you guys feeling good for this one? Hey, what's going on in camp? Hey, is this guy showing up? Hey, is he going out to the club? Whatever it is, they have better information. How about this? What if they have all the information about the betting habits for the customer on this given fight, right? The fight got canceled last time. They might have seen where their sharpest customer is going to bet on this one. They might book that into the line, so I just think that this is a harder fight to bet on. This is a fight where you got to be more confident in your read, dealing with a minus 200 favorite. We're talking about over a 65% implied win probability for a guy that doesn't have all that much UFC level experience. So I think that that's tough to say. On the other side, Munoz Jr.'s got some frame advantages. He's a little bit bigger. He's got the American style jiu-jitsu, very talented guy, also been knocked out brutally. Could affect his confidence, could affect a lot of things. So I think that both these guys, have some real challenges coming into this fight. It's hard to peak twice when you have a rebooked fight as well. Another X factor that you're trying to handicap. So for me, my lean here is a pass initially, but I think that this fight probably ends inside the distance. Both these guys very aggressive at times in their fights and look for opportunities to finish. I think that, that'll be something to look forward to here. So Willie Cat Santos was sick, according to the chat. Shout out to my guy, Mark. Thank you for your information. John Smith specifically says, Willie Cat revealed an abscess on his leg was what led to his withdrawal. Oh boy, that's not good. Wow. Yeah, I've dealt with that myself. I had a MRSA infection at one point in my life. Not a fun time, ladies and gentlemen. And, pretty serious, strong antibiotics. So yeah, hopefully he's feeling well now. And I will tell you though, antibiotics can have a serious effect on your cardio. So something to look at here is how much time he's had to recover and how much time he's been off antibiotics. I'll be definitely looking for Daniel Willie Cat Santos interviews, even if I have to get them translated, appreciate each and every one of you for the kind comments. Our guy Robot Chicken Wing says, Liam the Brain, appreciate you, my man. Thank you for sticking with us. A lot of great commentary as well. So next up, guys, what do we have here? We have a fight. I believe that this is Lacerda and Blackshear, but let me check. No, I'm getting ahead of myself. It is Jinyu Frey and Elise Reed. When you talk about low-level women's MMA, guys, this is what we're talking about. Elise Reed, talented striker in some respects, can throw good kicks, not a great puncher, but can throw in combinations, likes to work from that outside stance, fire a lot of shots with her legs, and she's primarily a kicker. So I think that's what she's going to try and bring to the table here. Jinyu Frey coming off a big knockout loss against Polyana Viena. Polyana Viena, round one. She's a dangerous fighter, man. She's knocked out other women before. She's got power in her hand. She's an aggressive woman. She comes out there willing to strike. Jinyu Frey was on the older side. She still is. So is she liable to get caught with a head kick, maybe frozen and knocked out here? I think that's possible. I would not rule that out. She is older. She's a little bit reactive at times. Never liked her reactions to strikes. That being said, I don't think Elise Reed is anything to write home about. Certainly not fired up to go play her as a favorite. She has not performed in that odds range very well in the UFC. I think that she's liable to be taken down. I think she's liable to be controlled on the ground. So, yeah, I don't love what I've seen from Elise Reed. She's shown better stuff in her recent fights, but just overall seems like a clear pass fight to me. Yeah, I don't love this fight. Next up, guys, I will do the research on it between now and then, but just don't love that fight at all. Luan Lacerda and Damon Blackshear. This is a fight that I did a bunch of research on, and it's a fascinating fight. I think that I definitely have a lean here. I'm going to lean towards the Lacerda side, and I'm seeing a lot of love for Blackshear this week. No problem there. I think he's a talented guy. I think he's had a pretty tough deal in terms of his UFC run. Goes out there against Zalal, is having a good fight, seems to be getting ahead of Zalal on the scorecards, then gives up that 10-8 round in round 3, gets hurt to the body, gets dropped there, was really having a hard time, gave up some bad positions. And I think that Blackshear, he is another guy who likes to go out there, primarily likes to throw his kicks, likes to keep a long-range fight, likes to do a lot of Mark makes a good point about the Elise Reed fight in terms of the age gap. I will point out that the age gap is less predictive in WMMA than in men's MMA, in my experience, but I do think that's an interesting note. That would have to be year to date. Obviously, there's been a way more than 15 fights that have happened in that sample. So I'll look into that for Bet MMA tips and their huge sample as well, and try and get back to you with that information, Mark. Appreciate the inquiry, though. Good point. But back to the Luan Lacerda and Damon Blackshear fight. When you're looking at Blackshear and what he brings to the table, like I mentioned, he's a good kicker. He likes to body lock. He likes to go for big takedowns. He likes to look for his submission game. He likes to be, threatening and aggressive from the top position, willing to go for mat returns, lift and returns. But overall, he's got a lot of hecticness to his style. He takes some risks in the grappling, makes some bad decisions. He gives up positions. He's not always very clear in his round winning. Even when he had some good opportunities against Basharat, even when he had some good opportunities, in that fight against Zalal to maybe finish the show, wasn't able to get it done, wasn't always able to find the next right position. And I think that those are the kind of things that could really, rear their ugly head here against Luan Lacerda. Lacerda, he's nothing to write home about in his boxing. He says, excuse me. He says that he's making leaps and bounds improvements in his boxing, camp over camp. I do think he's gotten better from what he showed on the regional scene. On the regional scene, the one thing I didn't like, he was constantly being forced to back up. But what I did like is that he was throwing a lot of shots while backing up, and he was doing a lot of kicks. He can kick on the retreat. He can kick off of the back foot, and he's got big, thunderous body kicks. We've seen that's the exact strike that was hurting Damon Blackshear. So I think that this guy, Luan Lacerda, could absolutely hurt Blackshear on the feet with his body kicks. He throws them a lot. He throws them with intention. You see that Blackshear is a guy who's got that lanky build where his body's constantly exposed. And I think that that's something to watch out for here. In terms of other things to watch out for here, he likes to get into that body lock. He likes to go inside. He likes to try and grab a hold of people. He likes to force fights into the clinch and make it a pace battle, things like that. And I think that against Lacerda, that's a bad idea. Lacerda's a black belt. Lacerda's very talented on the ground. You go back and watch his regional fights. The guy's a submission hunter. He's willing to pull guard. He's willing to, snatch a hold of the leg. He can create transitions. He can heel hook. He can armbar. He can choke. He's just very sound, I would say, on the ground in all positions. So it's really not an easy fight for Blackshear anywhere. Cody Stamann, he was a uniquely tough fight, I felt like, for Lacerda on rewatch, because Lacerda wasn't really a better wrestler than Stamann, right? So you can't take him down. Stamann didn't want to grapple with him at all. So he couldn't encourage him to come down into his guard. He couldn't pull guard. He couldn't, find a way to get this guy to engage with him. And then on top of all that, he's taken the fight on short notice. He wants to go out there and put on a good impression for the UFC, not be Kron Gracie and butt scoot, right, and try and get a hold of this guy. He's trying to make it a fun fight as well. So he mostly stood in the pocket boxing with Cody Stamann, and he won a round off him on every judge's scorecard. And, it didn't go his way, but it was a fight that showed he had promise. Cody Stamann's a guy who's competing with top-level guys in the UFC, in the top 15. And he's got good boxing. That's what he does well on the feet. He's not a great kicker. So he didn't engage in a kicking battle. He engaged in a punching battle, and it was a tough fight for him. I don't think we're going to see that here. I think both these guys prefer to kick. I think Lacerda's a better kicker. I think both these guys prefer to grapple. I think Lacerda's a better grappler. That's a really tough fight for Damon Blackshear to win, in my view. So I prefer the Lacerda side. I think that Damon's path here is to avoid the subs, stay in top position, push him into the fence, hold him there, maybe not engage on the ground, force it into some more standing exchanges. And I think that maybe he could catch him with the kicks. Lacerda doesn't have great defense. He's not very defensively sound. He's much more of a Muay Thai stance striker. He's susceptible to leg kicks as well. So he's not a perfect fighter by any means, but I just think that stylistically he's a really rough matchup for Damon. So I prefer the Lacerda side and be, definitely looking at some of the prop markets on his side come fight week. And now, guys, I'm actually willing to share what my first bet is on this card, because the line is gone, right? And so people that were in the Lab VIP, people that, are on my Bet MMA tips or whatever like that, they get my information first. They got Felipe Lins here at plus 140. The line, I don't want to speak out of my ass, but I believe it's down to about plus 120, plus 115, at most markets. I saw yesterday at Circus Sports, it was down to plus 105. So, the reason that I took this was multifaceted, and I'll run you guys through the reasons here. Because one of the things that we talk about on First Look is, how we come to our opinions. What are some of the trends that we're looking at? What are some of the details that we're looking into? And number one, I talked about how I felt like this line was going to move. You got two guys here that neither one of them setting the world on fire, right? Nobody's calling home a Felipe Lins, he's the next heavyweight champion or something, right? Nobody's doing that. Maxime Grishin, nobody's doing that, right? These are two virtually anonymous UFC light heavyweights. But let's talk about why I think Felipe Lins was the value side at plus 140. You've got the younger guy by 2 years. You've got a guy who's clearly on steroids, right? He comes in looking flabby, unmotivated for his first couple of UFC fights, ends up losing to Arlovski via decision, ends up getting cleaned up by Tanner Boser. And I think that was his wake-up call, where he says, God, I got to get back on the sauce. If I'm going to do this UFC thing, I got to really try. And he goes out there and he grits it out against Marcin Prachnio, gets the decision. Marcin Prachnio, in my opinion, was also on all the sauce in that fight. So he went out there, he did his job, and he showed he can get takedowns. He could be a little bit more multifaceted. Then we see goes out there in his next fight against OSP, just blasts through him, runs him down, bop, 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 cleans him up, and it's all over, right? I actually called that one. So again, my Roto Grinders preview article, I'll go back and share this on social media, but called Felipe Lins by KO1 there against OSP. Just felt like he was the younger guy, a little bit fresher, a little bit more dynamic, wanted to be there more, and he got the win, and this guy, Maxim Grishin, I think he's all right. I think that he was a good fighter when he came to the UFC. I just think he's definitely starting to age out a little bit. He's 39 years of age. He's getting taken down by William Knight. That's not a good look. I know William Knight is an athletic guy. He's just not very talented. He's not very high level for the UFC. He's dealt with some things outside the ring. We wish him well. God bless him. But again, I know that William Knight isn't a very high-level guy. And if you're having a competitive fight with William Knight, that's a problem for me. Felipe Lins, is the Tanner Boser loss aging great? No. But again, he moved down to light heavyweight, and this is a guy who I think at light heavyweight can be competitive. He can get takedowns. He can get top position. He's a better grappler, in my opinion, than Maxim Grishin. I think that on top of that, on the feet, he will probably be more or as consistent over 15 minutes as Maxim Grishin in terms of throwing out volume. So I think that Maxim Grishin can win this fight by decision or by knockout. That's it. I think Lins can win this fight any which way. I think he could win it by knockout. Maxim Grishin's chin has looked a little bit more questionable in recent years. I think the more likely pass would be by sub or by decision, by outworking him, by pushing him into the fence, by getting takedowns, or by touch, and go. Just being a little bit more elusive, being a little bit more fleet of foot. I think the Brazilian at plus 140 was the side. I think that now it's probably better to just pass on this fight. It's very volatile. Two guys that are lower level in the division. Either one could get knocked out. It's still 205. It's still light heavyweight. And Lins, he's a guy that is training an American top team. He's doing a lot of the right things. But it's not like Maxim Grishin doesn't train with good guys. Akhmat fight team, love him or hate him. The Ramzan Kadyrov crew, as I like to call them, they're definitely not moral arbiters for the world, but what they are is pretty damn good cage fighters, and a bunch of good guys have come through and worked with them. So I think that both these guys, dangerous fighters, but I just think have to lean towards Felipe Lins here. Brazil. They've been on a crazy run, Brazil. Lately, Mackenzie Dern getting it done in the main event last week. So overall, guys, just a lot of great fights. Glad that we're back to talk about the UFC. Is it the best card on paper? No. Is it a card that we have to discuss and that we're excited to have back in our lives? Absolutely. And we got the pay-per-view next week. We got a lot of great fight night cards coming up. So if you have not already, guys, make sure that you get subscribed to the channel. If you have a guest that you would like to see featured on the Thursday program, go ahead and drop that in the comments section down below. I would really appreciate your feedback. Already got one guest lined up for tomorrow. Going to look for a second one as well. Going to do the rest of my research between now and then. Make sure that I get my tape study done. Make sure that I do all my due diligence, dot my T's, cross my I's, have my official picks ready to go for my article and for you guys. So thank you all so much for your support. I truly appreciate it. Going to circle back around with the chat. Any questions that you guys have? We're at 57 minutes. We'll make it a tight hour here today, but I want to address any questions that you guys have about, it could be about anything, about what went on with Rich, whatever. God bless. I just want to clear the air now, make sure that we put that under the bridge and move forward. So let's see what our guy Dixon Snyder said. He said, Dear Liam, not sure if you saw my comment at the beginning. I really did win 10K on DK last UFC event, and I can honestly say it was in part because I got very valuable info from your show. Thank you, brother. That makes me so freaking happy, Dixon. At the end of the day, the slogan of this show, the reason that we're all assembled is the good guys versus the bookies. You never met a bookmaker with a part-time job. They're very good at what they do, but it doesn't mean they can't be beat, and it doesn't mean that we can't win with good information. It's an information business, so I'm glad that the information we gave on the show helped you win. That's what we're always trying to do. I'm not Nostradamus. I'm not always going to get it right, but I try and give you guys as much information as I can, as detailed breakdowns as I can, as much thought, effort, energy as I possibly can. So you guys are in a better position to win, whether you go with me, whether you go against me. I think that I always try and come strapped with information, new things, nuggets, tidbits that maybe could educate and help improve your game. So appreciate all the support and the feedback. Thank you guys so much. Mark says, Liam, watch Jared Gordon's interview when you have time. I heard a million red flags. Great point on the way out, Mark. I appreciate that. And I will definitely have to take that under advisement. I like to watch the interviews, see where a fighter's head's at, see where their confidence level is, see what their preparation is. So I'm definitely going to have to tune into that. You learn a lot at times from those interviews. So truly appreciate it. Just seeing as I scroll through the chat here, if there's anything else, that we've got to touch on from the chat. And I truly, truly appreciate you guys. If I missed your comments in here, just know I truly appreciate you being here. Northender, Big Liam, I appreciate you, Northender. Under 4.5 in the main event, says Ben. I appreciate that. My guy Rips and Picks, marketing guru, very smart guy in MMA as well, says, what's up, Liam in chat? Fresh off a break week. Let's get this money. Great guy contributing. Elijah Medina, shout out to Elijah. I got a big lean on Albazi this week. So, yeah, just trying to address everybody in the chat. Thank you guys so much. Here we go. Mike Oxlong says, no Rich. The Liam solo streams, they never had Rich on them. But in terms of the Thursday shows, no, Rich is not going to be on the Thursday shows anymore. Going to be me and a rotating panel of guests. So hope that satisfies everybody. Hope that you guys are interested in that. If you prefer, if I do it solo, if you prefer, some other formatting, just go ahead and drop that in the comments below. I always look at that. I try and answer every single comment, give feedback as well. So I appreciate you guys that engage below in the comment section. Means a lot, helps the video grow, but also, it's a great way for me to get to know you guys, interact with you, and, try and answer your questions, because I can't always get to them on the chat, but love to help you guys out when I can. Stacks Covers, another sharp guy from Twitter, says, what's up, Liam? Looking forward to the Dana White Contender Series crew. Indeed, brother. I'm excited as well. Contender Series, one of the places where I had an insane run to start off. So, excited to get back to it. Last season wasn't so great for me, man. So now I get another crack at it. Looking to make it 2 out of 3 really successful seasons on Dana White Contender Series. So excited to get back after it. Joe Midas says, Liam, don't need anybody. Ace is all his own. I appreciate you, brother. I like to spotlight other people in the community. I like to remind people that 2 really good handicappers at any time can disagree. You could have 2 really smart people look at a problem, see 2 different solutions. So it's just something to keep in the back of our minds, where sometimes, it can get wrapped up in a narrative of, hey, this is all, this is the perfect way to think about a fight. Oh no, there's always many sharp ways to look at a fight. So, I appreciate the kind words, but also, it should be understood. Rich is a very sharp guy. He's not on the show because he's not a sharp guy. He's not on the show because he doesn't want to be on the show. So it's all good. There's no bad blood there. Like I said, we wish him well. It's just he's doing his thing. No problem. We're going to continue to do our thing. And there's many ways to skin a cat. So I think that my process is proven over time. Tweaked it a little bit this year, as I've mentioned a few times, right, where I'm trying to go a little bit lower risk and try and maximize the return, the reward. That's what I've been working on this year as a strategy, but 2 years profitability under my belt, looking to make it 3 this year, plus money on the year so far. So that's always what we're looking to do. Keep the ball rolling. Good guys versus the bookies. Make more good bets than bad bets. If we do that, we're going to come out in the green. So that's what we're looking to do on this show. Profitable show, been one of the most profitable shows and channels in terms of giving out free advice and free information. And I'm very proud of that fact. And we're going to continue to do that. I have premium information, detailed write-ups, fighter profiles, more than 400 of them. I have a ton of premium information, but each and every week I like to come to you guys as well with free information. And that's what I do on this channel. So God bless you all. I truly appreciate the support. I hope that you enjoyed the fights 2 weeks ago. I hope that you enjoyed any of the boxing that you took in. If you guys didn't see as well, do I have my backpack in here with me? I don't, but I'll have to mention it on the next stream. Some reading materials. A lot of people ask me for book recommendations as well. We got the shelf of books right here. A lot of great combat sports titles, but just picked up a boxing book this weekend to read for pleasure in the off week, and I've been thoroughly enjoying it. It's gripping, page turning. So I'm going to share that with you guys as well. So guys, just want to appreciate everybody that's here. God bless you all. Thank you for the support. Get subscribed if you're not already, because we do this shit every week. Come back. Until next time, we'll do it all again.